Good afternoon and welcome back to the Suburban Proletarian. My name is Greg and today I want to look at a new knife I picked up. I've actually had it for over a month and I just haven't had time to review it. And this is not going to be a full review. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure I'm going to post this video on its own. I may roll this into a longer video that comes along later, but I wanted to take a quick look at this knife as it comes out of the box, because there's a couple of things I'm not really crazy about. I think it's pretty nice overall, but I want you to see how it looks when it comes from the factory. And as you can already tell, we're looking at a Byrd knife, and this is specifically the Byrd Cara Cara 2 stainless steel plain edge. The model number is BY03P2. And as you're probably already well aware, Byrd knives are made by Spyderco. I've seen some pretty irate reviews of these knives on Amazon. People getting really upset and even screechy about how Amazon is selling counterfeit Spyderco knives. But as you can clearly see, Byrd is a sub-brand of Spyderco. The knives are designed and produced by Spyderco. Not in Golden, Colorado, but then again, most of Spyderco's knives are not made in Golden, Colorado. These happen to be made in China. Comes in a pretty standard Spyderco looking box, although of course it has the Byrd name and the sort of bird head or comet logo. So anyway, let's take a look at what we've got here. And this is the Cara Cara 2 stainless. As you can see, it is very similar to Spyderco's other all stainless models. The Cara Cara 2 specifically is modeled on the Endura. It's exactly the same size as the Endura. And you can see here, this is an actual Spyderco Delica in stainless steel. I reviewed this knife a couple of months ago, and it's made from VG10 steel, made in Seki City, Japan. Very nicely manufactured, very smooth, opens and closes very smoothly. No rough edges anywhere. It's very nicely finished all the way around, as is the case with all of these all stainless Spyderco knives. But it's not cheap. This knife was about 90 bucks, and that's pretty significant. And one thing I noted when I reviewed this knife a month or two ago was that all of Spyderco's all stainless knives have a saber ground blade, which is very nice for bushcrafty stuff, but there are a lot of advantages to the full flat grind blades that Spyderco is putting on a lot of its other knives. But then I learned that some of their Byrd knives, which are also available in all stainless, such as this, come with a full flat grind blade, which is much better suited to sort of fine slicing, food prep. I talked about the fact that an all stainless model is really ideal for use in the kitchen. I know folding knives are not generally kitchen knives, but if you're going to use a folding knife for veg prep or other food prep, all stainless is great because you've got this very smooth, non-porous, antiseptic surface. It's very easy to wash these, get them nice and clean, sterilized. So I went ahead and bought this knife. As I said, the all stainless Delica is about $90. You'd pay over $100 for an all stainless Endura. The Byrd Cara Cara 2 in all stainless cost me less than $20 on Amazon. You can see it is made in China, and it's not made from VG10. It's made from 8CR13 MOV, which is pretty much your standard Chinese stainless knife steel nowadays. It's not a bad steel. I think it falls somewhere in between AUS 6 and AUS 8. Most 8CR13 MOV blades that I've had take and hold a fairly good edge. Spyderco tends to be particularly good at heat treating 8CR13 MOV to give it a little bit better performance than you might even get from some other manufacturers. Now, you can see right out of the box, the Byrd really seems to compare pretty nicely. The finish on the handle scales, the grind on the blade. I mean, other than the fact that they're made from different materials, the clip is very similar. Now, one thing is Spyderco's knives, which come with 4-position pocket clips, tend to always ship in the tip down position. I've changed this one. I've moved the clip to right hand tip up, which I prefer. I can work with tip down. It's not a big deal, but if I'm given the option of mounting it on 4 different points, I'll pick right-handed tip up every time because it's just what I got used to. First of all, Byrd knives ship with the blade in the tip up position as opposed to tip down, so I did not have to move this clip. This is the way it came from the factory. I mean, other than taking it out of the plastic bag, I've done absolutely nothing to this knife so far. You can see the Spyderco is already starting to collect some scratches on the handle. This is absolutely brand new as it came from the factory. So anyway, it does compare rather nicely. All the bevels are nice, the finishes are nice, the blade grind very even on both sides, nice flat surfaces. The jimping on the back of the blade is not quite as nicely machined and aggressive as it is on the Delica. It's a little larger and a little bit softer. It's not as aggressive. You can't get quite as good a purchase, but it's still pretty good. And of course, the Byrd knives all feature the choil here for choking up on the blade, which the Spyderco does not feature. You can kind of get your finger in there, but it's not the safest thing probably. The choil is much better, and of course there is some jimping there to prevent your finger from slipping forward onto the blade. But really, at less than a quarter of the price, well, no, about a quarter of the price. This knife is incredibly nicely finished compared to even the actual Spyderco. But there are a few things I'd like to point out. I want to address the reason I'm rushing this review or this unboxing out fairly quickly is I am going on a camping trip next week, and I'm planning on using this knife for some camp chores and some food prep, and I want to do a couple of things to it, but I wanted to show you what it looked like out of the box. One thing that's nice about the Spydercos is they are really nicely finished everywhere. Everywhere you look, everything is beautifully finished, nice and smooth, no sharp edges, nothing to catch or cut. Even this surface here is very evenly machined and smooth, beautiful. The Byrd is pretty nice, but this is one area where it really kind of comes up a bit short compared to the Spyderco. The back edge is very smooth, very nicely machined, very, very, very similar to the Spyderco. Maybe a little bit bigger gap here at the bottom of the locking bar, but other than that, almost indiscernible. They both have the Boyd dent. Here, however, it's a little bit nasty. The machining here is pretty ugly, and it's not even even. You can see this side, this handle scale is quite a bit taller than this handle scale. And this is a little ugly. I want to smooth that out, even that up a little bit. But the really most annoying feature is there's quite a burr in here. This is fairly sharp, and the butt of the knife is extremely sharp. This can be quite irritating against your hand, depending on how you're holding the knife. And that's really very, very sharp. Now, luckily, this is brushed stainless steel. It's very easy to reprofile this and round this off. I'm not going to round it to the degree that the Delica is rounded. There's no reason for the butt to be quite this round. I mean, that is very nice and it feels very nice, but I'm going to be freehanding this on a band sander. So I'm probably just going to be rounding this in the slightest bit, rounding these off ever so slightly. And again, I want to try to match this up to make the two handle scales the same level. And this is just nasty looking. It looks like it was done with a belt sander, and a really gritty one at that. So there's really, I mean, the knife is really quite nice, other than a little bit of machining here. One other weird thing, which isn't really a problem, but the lanyard hole, where it was drilled through the spacer that holds the two handle scales apart, actually comes out. There's a tube that goes inside the lanyard hole. So that's solid inside. There's no gap in there. But you can actually see a bit of the lanyard tube right there, where it came very, very close to the inside edge of this spacer. And it doesn't impact the blade or anything. It's absolutely, from an operational standpoint, a non-issue, but it is sort of interesting. It just shows a little bit of difference. But when you're talking about a difference between less than $20 and over $90, I would have expected a much greater difference in the overall fit and finish between the much more expensive Spyderco and the much more affordable Byrd knife. And that simply hasn't been the case. It's just a really, really nice knife, and I think these really represent a very, very good value. Now, obviously, the Byrd knife is quite a bit larger, and likewise, it's quite a bit heavier. The Cara Cara 2 weighs in at about 8.5 ounces. The Spyderco Delica in all stainless is just about 7.5 ounces, so you're looking at an extra ounce of weight here. Closed length isn't a huge difference. The Spyderco Delica is 4.25 inches. When it's closed, the Cara Cara 2 is about 4 7/8 inches closed, so less than an inch in difference there. You've got a 3-inch blade on the Delica as opposed to a 3 3/4 inch blade on the Cara Cara. The cutting edge here is 2 5/8. The cutting edge on the Cara Cara is 3 1/4, so that's a fairly significant difference. And the overall length, which is nice, I mean, this is a nice outdoor length, this is a nice EDC length. The overall length is significantly different. You're talking about 7 1/8 versus 8.5 inches. So it's over an inch difference between the two knives. Now back 10, 15, 20 years ago, I carried a Spyderco Endura for years, and I kind of figured this to be an EDC size, a good size for EDC. And it's quite slender. Despite its all-steel construction, it's still only a little over 8 ounces, so it's not terribly heavy. But I find today I'm starting to tend towards smaller knives. A knife like the Delica is plenty big enough for me to do just about anything I would need to do with a knife. The problem with a knife like the Cara Cara, there's a threshold somewhere in between these two knives. I'm not talking about legal restrictions. If you live in a jurisdiction where you have restrictive knife laws, you would definitely want to check what the legality is as far as you can carry. I'm talking about a sort of a societal threshold, somewhere between a knife this size and a knife this size. And it's very arbitrary. Nobody's running around with tape measures for the most part, measuring knives. But I have found that a knife the size of the Delica, if you pull it out to cut some string or something at a family gathering or a backyard barbecue, or it's Christmas morning and somebody needs a knife to cut the ribbon off their Christmas package, you can pull out the Delica, and even if you've got some real shrinking violets in your social circle, it may raise an eyebrow or two, but nothing major. A knife the size of the Endura, once you get up here to, what did I say it was, 8.5 inches overall, this knife, very, very similar to this knife will send people running for the hills. Sure that you are going to go on a stabbing spree. You will get sarcastic comments. Ooh, couldn't you find a bigger knife? Gee, do you think your knife's big enough? That kind of nonsense, which I don't really care. As a matter of fact, sometimes when I'm around friends and family, I actually like a little shock value, so it doesn't really bother me too much. But when you're in mixed company, when you're out in public, for some reason, a knife this size will not get too many objections. A knife this size can get people calling the police on you. Actually haven't had people call the police on me. I'm generally very, very discreet about carrying knives, but it certainly could happen. This seems to be generally inoffensive. This really offends certain people's sensibilities, so do keep that in mind. Anyway, I just wanted to take a really quick look at this. I'm probably going to end up editing some of this out. This may become part of a greater video. If not, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please consider subscribing to the channel. Like my videos or dislike them as you wish. If you are a subscriber, go ahead and click the little bell icon down below. That'll allow YouTube to send you notifications when I post updates to the channel. And when I do, I hope to see all of you here again at that time. Thanks, guys.